Hello, this is Spellbinder of part 2 to this. It's scary. You should know this because this is what they're going to do for the next couple of years. This is 2010. By 2012, armamentarists will be in full force. Listen.
The question is then, how do they do it? How in the world are they getting this agenda from the international level down to the local level? Well, they've got a plan for that too. Now, on the environmental side, there's probably a number of different plans, but from the environmental side, you have an organization called the IUCN.
IUCN?
The International Union for the Conservation of Nature. Been in existence since the United Nations was created. It's not part of the United Nations Charter. It's a scientific advisor to the United Nations. But through the IUCN, such programs as ecosystem management, American Heritage Rivers, the Clean Water Initiative, the Endangered Species Act, and all the rules and regulations of the EPA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the U.S. Forest Service, the U.S. Park Service, and so forth. They also discuss property rights in this particular document. They say that property rights are not absolute, they're not unchanging, they're not inalienable like our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence of the states. Rather, they are a complex, dynamic, and shifting relationship between two or more parties over space or time. In a biocentric approach, says the IUCN, the rights of nature are defended first and foremost on the grounds of the intrinsic value of animals, plants, rivers, mountains, and ecosystems, rather than simply on the basis of the utilitarian value or benefit to human beings. In other words, nature comes first. Nature's needs comes before man's needs. In a religious context, it's called pantheism, the belief that nature is God. It goes on to say, even worse, people are then members of a community of beings, like human beings, living and non-living. So a rock is now elevated up to the status of a human being, and they
worship your rock
in the eyes of this belief system. It's not hard to imagine that if you believe that humans are the cause of all the worst problems, that we're overpopulated. They give two solutions, and only two, to this problem. The first is that it's estimated that an agricultural world in which most human beings are peasants should be able to support 7 billion people. Well, folks, we have 6 billion people right now.
We're all peasants.
All of us in this room, or nearly all of us in this room, are going to have to become agrarian peasants if we use this solution. In contrast, they go on to say a reasonable estimate for an industrialized world society at the present North American material standard of living would be 1 billion people.
That's all. You're all out of the list.
So if we wanted to maintain our current standard of living, we would have to reduce the Earth's human population by somewhere around 70%. In 1970, just 3 years after the publication of the Iron Mountain Report, which calls for, if we're going to create a world government, we can no longer use war as a mechanism to cause fear amongst populations and therefore allow us to control the behavior of populations through fear. And they settled on, in 1967, in their publication, called the Iron Mountain Report, the Environmental Holocaust. In 1970, 3 years after that publication, Foreign Relations began to publish a series of articles describing the ecological holocaust that was facing the world. And in this particular issue, the first issue, done by George Kennan to prevent a world disaster, where it was summed up in 3 points that the eco-crisis is a global threat so great that it endangers all of life on Earth.
If you believe that, I can sell you property on Mars. We are not the problem, they are. I wish you would wake up.
The 10 hottest years ever.
Here's another globalist.
14 years. And the hottest of all,
Al Gore.
2005. We are causing global warming. This is really
I wish I had his money.
Issue so much as a moral issue. Temperature increases are taking place all over the world, and that's causing stronger storms.
Yeah, right.
Is it possible that we should prepare against other threats besides terrorists? The his experience.
They created all.
If this were to go, sea level worldwide would go up 20 feet.
And I'll sell you property on Mars.
Shanghai, 40 million people. The area around Calcutta, 60 million.
Such a lie.
The World Trade Center Memorial would be underwater.
Oh
Think
my
of the
God.
impact. A couple 100,000 refugees. And then imagine 100 million.
Never be able to go to
Those
Mars.
who deny global warming are just flat out wrong. Helen Goodman from
Yeah.
Boston Globe wrote,
He's
"Let's
making
just say that
buku
global
bucks.
warming deniers are
Read,
now on par with Holocaust
study,
deniers."
Scientists
research.
silenced for questioning the threat of global warming.
Now that I've had several friends who have essentially been told that if you speak out on climate change, you must do so as an independent citizen. If you do so through our organization or through our institution, you will essentially be fired.
Once you realize how many holes there are in the consensus solution, you may begin to open up your mind to the other side of the global warming debate as a whole.
Oh yeah, global warming, sun.
In the last century. They completely ignore the fact that there's this thing called the Oregon Petition that was signed by 19,000 professionals and scientists who don't agree with the idea that we are causing climate change.
I can't tell you how many calls I've received from parents saying their kids are now being shown an inconvenient truth completely unchallenged, not just in science class, but in art and math classes.
I have to speak out and say that the science we have is still incomplete. And the science we're being told by the IPCC is really incorrect science.
True.
Global warming paradoxically causes not only more flooding, but also more drought. Big hurricanes, tornadoes, fearsome diseases, polio, tuberculosis, West Nile virus, avian flu, SARS, polar bears that have actually drowned, mosquitoes, caterpillars, communism, slavery, global warming, global warming, global warming.
Aurelia Pesci, who actually created the Club of Rome and is the inner circle of the global elitists in 1991, stated that while searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, and the like would fit the bill. All of these dangers are caused by human intervention. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself.
If you believe that, I sell you
bluntly,
property on Mars.
global warming is a complete fallacy. Al Gore received a Grammy and the Nobel Peace Prize for a film that is filled with holes and mistruths.
Ice cores taken 2,000 meters below the surface have enabled us to look at the last 160,000 years. We believe that in Greenland, the medieval warm period was about 1.5 degrees warmer on average than today.
And they also show consistently warmer temperatures thousands of years ago before man-made greenhouse gases existed.
Approach our time, we can see that in the period between 4,000 years ago and back to the period 2,000 years ago, which is actually the Roman age, the temperatures have been decreasing in Greenland by 2.5 degrees.
Al Gore is made out to be a revolutionary figure attempting to save the planet, which is quite true. He just doesn't mention the fact that saving the Earth doesn't involve you. According to his agenda, it will result in massive land repossession and extreme limitations on food and water and fossil fuels for the public. And please note that Al Gore is a sustainable developer.
Has
The
5
global
or 6
warming
children.
lie is very popular today because it receives major media coverage and has an attractively titled goal of saving the planet. But how does this tie in with Agenda 21? The result of the 1992 Earth Summit Conference in Rio de Janeiro was the Kyoto Treaty. The Kyoto Treaty states that every country must drastically reduce the use of fossil fuels by mandate of the United Nations.
To make money.
Concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are at their highest levels in more than 200,000 years. If the trend does not change, scientists expect the seas to rise 2 feet or more over the next century. Island chains and formaldehyde will disappear from the map unless we reverse the predictions. Thank you very much.
Follow the money. See who's making money. Him,
And as of
Al
June
Gore.
2007, 172 nations and other government entities have ratified the treaty. And if you were wondering how this ties into putting the Earth's priority above human survival in accordance with pagan beliefs, every country's deadline for the implementation of Agenda 21 and the Kyoto Treaty is in 2012.
There we go. 2012, they're going to kill us all. We're not on their list of saved. Gotta remember that. They're out to kill us all. And they're going to be the ones to make all the property and money off of this. That's what they want, actually land. They're land sharks. If you don't believe me, just look at them. They're out to possess it all.
And if this wasn't enough, when the Pentagon was damaged in 9/11, they set a goal to have a completely new and improved Pentagon in December of 2012.
Ooh, see?
So Codex Alimentarius goes into effect at the end of 2009, which gives it 3 years for the Codex regulations on food to create billions of preventable diseases and deaths. When citizens of every nation are dying of starvation and diseases and fear for their lives because of global warming and major catastrophes, they will do what the public has been proven to do in times of great peril. They will beg for their government to step in and do something.
That's right.
How are they going to get you to join the new army? They're going to say, we have a solution. You see, one of the tricks of the Illuminati is they create a problem, and then they provide a
William
solution.
Cooper.
And pray tell, what will the United Nations suggest when there's a global problem? They will demand a global government, a new world order. Exactly as the Maya, Hopi, Kali Yuga, and many other pagan civilizations prophesized. By 2012, the Kyoto Treaty, Agenda 21, Codex Alimentarius, and the new Pentagon will be fully operational to enforce a new world order. And the new world religion is obvious. We will all worship the earth, Gaia, the mother goddess we saved from extinction from global warming. We will be told that to keep from repeating the mistakes that we made in the past, we must hold the earth in higher regard than humans, just as pagan traditions require. This is too obvious to ignore. It is right in front of our faces, and yet we still refuse to see it. I guarantee you that by 2012 there will be a World War III, but it will not be between nations. It will be us and them. They know this. Why do you think the UN is consistently trying to disarm the public and the nations?
See?
They don't want us to be capable of fighting back. The proof of this is in the film released by the UN called Armed to the Teeth, where it demonizes gun ownership. It is also shown in the freedom from war policy put in place by JFK in 1961.
President John Kennedy went to the United Nations September 1961, and he presented the United States Program for General and Complete Disarmament in a Peaceful World during a speech, and he said, this is the official program of the United States of America. It's a disarmament program. It calls for the United States to turn over its military to the United Nations. Let that sit for a second. It calls for the United States to turn over its military to the United Nations. The program ends by saying progressive controlled disarmament would proceed to a point where no state would have the military power to challenge the progressively strengthened UN peace force. The UN would have all military power.
This policy outlines some pretty scary scenarios when you understand what it reads. It calls for the disbanding of all national armed forces and the prohibition of their reestablishment in any form whatsoever, other than those required to preserve internal order and for contributions to a United Nations peace force. This clearly shows that the UN is calling for all military power to be under their control. Inspection and verification must establish both that nations carry out scheduled limitation or reductions and that they do not retain armed forces and armaments in excess of those permitted at any stage of the disarmament process. Strategic delivery vehicles will be reduced. Arms and armed forces will be reduced. And all the while, UN peacekeeping powers would be strengthened. A UN Peace Observation Group would be available to investigate any situation which might constitute a threat to or a breach of the peace. Establishing of a permanent international peace force within the United Nations, and depending on the findings of an experts commission, a halt in the production of chemical, bacteriological, and radiological weapons, and a reduction of the existing stocks or their conversion to peaceful uses.
There you go.
Peaceful uses of biological